My name is Serafina Sterling. I am 32 years old, and I still remember the exact moment my family's faces changed from mockery to shock. Standing there in my soaked, bespoke silk dress, water dripping from my hair after my own father had pushed me into the fountain at my sister's wedding, I smiled. Not because I was happy, but because I knew what was coming. They had no idea who I really was or who I had married. The whispers, the laughs, the pointed fingers, all about to be silenced forever. This is the story of that day, but to understand it, you must first understand the quiet chill of the house I grew up in. We lived in Seacliff Point, a picturesque coastal city known for its historic bluffs and old money families. Our home, a sprawling Victorian with a wraparound porch and immaculate rose gardens, was a testament to the Sterling family's standing. To the outside world, we were the picture of refined success. But behind the heavy oak door, the air was thin, starved of the warmth and unconditional love I read about in books. From my earliest memories, I was the quiet shadow to my sister Isabella's brilliant light. She was 2 years younger, but her effervescence captivated everyone. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" became the constant, mournful refrain of my childhood, played on repeat by my parents, Arthur and Beatrice Sterling. My father, a respected art history professor at the local university, valued aesthetic perfection and intellectual pedigree above all else. My mother, a former debutante who chaired the city's most prestigious charity galas, saw life as a series of social chess moves. I, with my quiet disposition, my preference for books over parties, and my thoughtful, measured nature, was a perpetual disappointment on their board. When I brought home a report card of straight A's, it was always the same week Isabella won a regional sailing competition. My academic diligence was commendable, Serafina, but a bit one-dimensional, while Isabella's athleticism was a sign of her well-rounded, vibrant spirit. The pattern was relentless. At family gatherings, my mother would adjust my posture with a sharp tug on my shoulder. "Sit up straight, dear. Confidence is projected, not just felt. Look at Isabella, such natural poise." For my 16th birthday, my father gave a toast. I remember the flutter of hope in my chest, a foolish, persistent bird. He raised his crystal glass and announced, with beaming pride, that Isabella had been selected to attend a prestigious summer arts program in Florence. My birthday cake, a simple chocolate confection I had requested, sat forgotten in the kitchen. The college years were a quiet emancipation. I attended a state university, a choice my parents deemed practical, if unambitious, and pursued a double major in art history and chemistry, an odd combination that fascinated me and baffled them. I worked part-time at the campus library, savoring the hushed reverence of the archives. They rarely visited, but they flew to Paris twice to see Isabella's student exhibitions at the Sorbonne. At my graduation, my father's only comment was, "Well, at least you have a degree. I suppose you can find a quiet curatorial position somewhere." Meanwhile, Isabella's art degree was lauded as the brave pursuit of a true calling. These 1,000 paper cuts, delivered over a lifetime, taught me a vital lesson. Their approval was a currency I could never afford. So, I stopped trying to earn it. During my master's program at the Courtauld Institute in London, a world away from Seacliff Point, I began building a life they couldn't touch. I stopped sharing details of my work, my friendships, my nascent successes. I built walls, not of anger, but of self-preservation. The irony was that my career was blossoming in ways they couldn't have imagined. My unique blend of art history and forensic chemistry made me a sought-after expert in art authentication and conservation. I found my home at the Ethelred Foundation, a discreet but immensely powerful global trust dedicated to preserving and acquiring the world's most significant cultural artifacts. By 29, I was leading the acquisitions department, making decisions that shaped collections in museums from the Louvre to the Met. My life was a quiet tapestry of hushed auction houses, climate-controlled vaults, and the thrilling, secret scent of ancient canvas and parchment. It was through the foundation that I met Damien Thorne. He wasn't an artist or a historian, but a philanthropist and the visionary CEO of Thorne Industries, a global technology firm at the forefront of sustainable energy. He was a major benefactor of a Florentine museum where I was overseeing the restoration of a damaged Botticelli. Our first meeting was in a dusty, sun-drenched restoration studio, surrounded by the ghosts of Renaissance masters. He didn't see a quiet, bookish woman. He saw the passion in my eyes as I described the chemical composition of 15th-century pigments. He saw the strength in my hands as I handled a priceless artifact. Our connection was immediate, a meeting of two minds who saw the world through a lens of deep, focused passion. "I've never met anyone like you," he told me on our third date, walking along the Arno at midnight. "You hold history in your hands, Serafina. It's extraordinary." His words were not validation, they were recognition. It was a profound and beautiful difference. We married 18 months later, in a private ceremony in a small, 12th-century chapel in the Tuscan countryside. Our only witnesses were my closest colleague from the foundation, Dr. Alastair Finch, and Damien's sister. Our decision to keep our marriage private wasn't just about security, though that was a factor given Damien's public profile. It was my choice. I wanted to keep this one precious part of my life sacred, untainted by the long shadows of my family. For 3 years, we built a life of quiet joy, maintaining our separate public identities. He traveled the world, transforming industries. I traveled the world, saving history. We would meet in London, Tokyo, or our beautiful art-filled home in New York, our sanctuary from the world. My role at the foundation grew until I was appointed the youngest ever director of curation and acquisitions. Which brings me back to my sister's wedding. The invitation, engraved in rose gold on thick, creamy cardstock, had arrived 6 months prior. Isabella was marrying Tristan Lancaster, heir to the Lancaster shipping fortune. The wedding was to be the social event of the year in Seacliff Point, precisely the kind of opulent display my parents adored. Damien was scheduled to be in Geneva, finalizing a multi-billion-dollar green energy accord with a European consortium. "I can reschedule," he offered, seeing the hesitation in my eyes. "This is too important for your company, for the world," I insisted. "I'll be fine. It's one afternoon. I'll try to make it back for the reception," he promised. "Even if it's just for the end." And so I found myself driving my unassuming sedan, a stark contrast to the luxury cars that filled my life with Damien, along the coastal highway toward the Crestwood Manor, my stomach a knot of old anxieties. I hadn't seen most of my extended family in over 2 years. I had chosen a simple but elegant deep teal silk dress, a gift from Damien, and wore my hair in a soft chignon. I looked composed, serene, untouchable. If only I felt that way inside. The Manor's grand ballroom was a symphony of white peonies and blush roses, cascading from chandeliers and entwined around marble pillars. I handed my invitation to a hostess, who scanned her list with a small, polite frown. "Miss Sterling, we have you at table 19. "Of course. Not the family table." My cousin Camilla spotted me first, her eyes widening before her face settled into a mask of practiced sympathy. "Serafina, what a surprise. We weren't certain you'd make it." Her gaze slid pointedly to my empty side. "And you came alone?" "I did," I replied, my voice even. "How brave," she murmured, her tone dripping with pity. "Mother said you took that museum job in Richmond? So quiet for you. It must be difficult to meet people." A complete fiction. I had never worked in Richmond. But this was their way, crafting narratives that cast me as the lonely, unremarkable spinster. "You must be thinking of someone else," I said calmly. More relatives drifted over, each interaction a variation on the same theme. Aunt Genevieve commented on my practical hairstyle. Uncle Henry asked loudly if I was still dusting off old pots for that little foundation, and whether I'd ever find a career that could attract a man of substance. Isabella's maid of honor, Penelope, approached with air kisses that landed inches from my cheeks. "Serafina, darling, it's been an age. Love the dress. Is it vintage? You were always so clever at finding those hidden gems." She didn't wait for an answer. "Isabella was just saying she hoped you'd come, even though you missed the shower and the bachelorette and the rehearsal dinner." Each event had conflicted with a critical acquisition trip I couldn't discuss. I had sent lavish gifts and heartfelt notes for each. Work commitments, I said simply. Right, your mysterious little job, she said, making air quotes. Tristan's cousin works for the Smithsonian. He says those archival jobs can be terribly isolating. I just smiled. Let them believe I was a lonely archivist. The truth was not for them, not yet. My mother, resplendent in a pale gold Carolina Herrera gown, finally appeared. Serafina, you made it. Her tone implied I had crossed a continent on foot. Your sister was so worried. I wouldn't miss Isabella's wedding, I said. Her eyes did a swift, critical appraisal of my appearance, searching for a flaw. Finding none, she settled on, that color is a bit severe, dear. It drains you. You should have consulted me. Before I could respond, a swell of music announced the arrival of the wedding party. Isabella, now officially Mrs. Tristan Lancaster, was a vision in a custom Oscar de la Renta gown. My father beamed, his face alight with a pride so profound it was almost painful to witness. I searched my memory for a time he had looked at me that way and came up empty. The maitre d' led me to table 19, tucked away in a corner near the kitchens. I was seated with a handful of my parents' business acquaintances who didn't know me and a great-aunt whose hearing aid whistled softly. Are you one of the Lancaster cousins, dear? She asked, squinting at me. No, I'm Arthur and Beatrice's daughter, I explained. Isabella's sister. Oh, her face registered genuine surprise. I didn't realize they had another. The words, a simple, careless statement, landed like a stone in my chest. After all these years, it still stung. Dinner was an elaborate, multi-course affair. From my distant outpost, I watched my family hold court at the head table, their laughter echoing in the grand room. The family photos had, of course, been taken before I arrived. We had to move the schedule up, darling, things were running behind, my mother had explained with a dismissive wave of her hand. During the speeches, Penelope spoke of Isabella as being the sister I never had, pointedly ignoring my existence. The best man toasted Tristan for marrying into the Sterling family and getting the prize of the collection. I maintained my composure, sipping my water, staying clear-headed. I needed to be. Damien had texted an hour ago, landed. Traffic from the airfield is heavy. ETA 45 minutes. Just a little longer. When the dancing began, I made my way to a quiet alcove overlooking the gardens, the scent of night-blooming jasmine a welcome reprieve. My mother found me there, her champagne flute glinting. You could at least pretend to be enjoying yourself, she hissed, her smile never faltering for the benefit of any onlookers. Your perpetual melancholy is becoming a topic of conversation. I'm not melancholy, Mother. I'm observing. Well, observe with a smile. The Lancasters are an important family. Isabella has made an exceptional match. Don't embarrass us. As if my quiet presence was the source of embarrassment. The least you could have done was bring a date, she continued. Everyone is asking why you're here alone. Again. I didn't bother explaining that my husband's philanthropic trust had a larger endowment than the entire Lancaster shipping fortune. The time for that was coming. The reception was in full swing when my father tapped his glass for attention. He stood beside an elaborate ice sculpture of two swans, his posture radiating satisfaction. Today, he began, his professor's voice carrying effortlessly, is the proudest day of my life. My beautiful Isabella has made a match that exceeds even a father's most ambitious dreams. He turned to Tristan. You are gaining not just a wife, but an entry into a family built on a legacy of beauty and accomplishment. He raised his glass higher. To Isabella, who has never, not once, disappointed us. From her first steps to her honors from the Sorbonne, to her celebrated art, she has been a constant source of joy and pride. My chest tightened. Not because I expected a mention, I knew better, but because of the devastating finality of that unspoken comparison. Isabella has never disappointed us. The implication hung in the air, thick and suffocating. As he continued, listing Isabella's many achievements, I slipped quietly toward the French doors leading to the terrace. I needed air. I needed to feel the cool night on my skin before Damien arrived. The terrace overlooked a beautifully lit tiered fountain, its gentle splashing a soothing counterpoint to the strained celebration inside. I had almost reached my sanctuary when my father's voice boomed from behind me. Leaving so soon, Serafina? I turned. He was standing 10 feet away, microphone still in hand. The music had stopped. The entire room was looking at us. My mother and Isabella stood beside him, their faces masks of disapproval. Just getting some air, I replied, my voice miraculously steady. Running away is more like it, he said, the microphone amplifying his condescending tone. Classic Serafina. Vanishing whenever the family spotlight gets too bright. A hot flush crept up my neck. That's not true, isn't it? His voice took on the familiar, cutting edge of a lecture. You missed half the wedding events. You arrived alone, without so much as the courtesy of a +1. As if you have nothing and no one to share. The room was utterly silent. I'm sorry my solo attendance offends you, I said carefully. She couldn't even find a date, my father announced to the room, and a few nervous titters broke the silence. 32 years old, and not a single prospect. Meanwhile, your sister has married into one of the most prominent families in the state. The laughter grew, encouraged by his performance. Dad, I said, my voice a low warning. This isn't the time or place. It's exactly the time and place, he retorted, advancing on me. This is a celebration of success, of achievement, something you've spent your life observing from the sidelines. Each word was a precisely aimed dart. I glanced at my mother and sister. They just watched, my mother with a tight, affirming smile, Isabella with a look of undisguised triumph. You think we don't know why you hide away in that dusty little job of yours? He continued, his voice rising. It's because you've always been jealous of your sister. Always the second best, always the disappointment. He was inches from me now, his face contorted with decades of simmering resentment. Dad, please stop, I whispered, aware of the hundreds of eyes on us. Stop what? Telling the truth? The truth that you've never measured up? That you are an embarrassment to the Sterling name. And in that moment, something inside me didn't snap, it settled. A profound, quiet calm washed over me. The foolish, hopeful bird in my chest finally stilled. It was over. The desperate need for their approval, the hope that one day they would see me, it was all gone. You have no idea who I am, I said, my voice soft but clear. I know exactly who you are, he snarled. And then his hand shot out, shoving me hard against my shoulders. The push was shockingly forceful, catching me completely off guard. I stumbled backward, my arms flailing, my heel catching on the edge of the stone basin. For one suspended, weightless moment, there was only the gasp of the crowd and the starry night sky. Then, the shocking, biting cold of the water as I plunged backward into the fountain. Water engulfed me, silencing the world for a second. My silk dress ruined. My hair, a cascade of cold water. The shock was immense, but as I surfaced, sputtering, it was the wave of laughter from the crowd that hit me hardest. It started as a few titters, then swelled into a full-throated roar. Someone wolf whistled. I pushed myself up, water streaming from my face. Through the dripping curtain of my hair, I saw them, my father, looking triumphant, my mother, her hand covering a smirk, my sister, her face alight with undisguised glee. A photographer's flashbulb popped, immortalizing my humiliation. But as I stood there, drenched and degraded in the center of that fountain, a strange and powerful clarity bloomed within me. I was done. Done being small. Done being silent. Done hiding my life to protect their fragile egos. I stood up to my full height, water cascading from my dress. I pushed my wet hair back from my face and looked directly at my father, whose smile was just beginning to falter. Remember this moment, Dad, I said, my voice carrying across the suddenly quiet terrace. It wasn't a shout, but it was filled with a new and unfamiliar authority. Remember exactly what you just did. I took a deliberate step out of the fountain, my wet shoes squelching on the flagstones. Remember the choices you made today. Because I promise you I will. A stunned silence fell over the guests. I walked, dripping, through the parted crowd, my head held high. No one offered a hand, a towel, a kind word. And for the first time in my life, I realized I didn't need them to. In the blessedly empty powder room, I stared at my reflection. The mascara I rarely wore was smudged beneath my eyes. My dress was a sodden wreck. But the woman looking back at me was not defeated. She was free. I retrieved my clutch, which I'd left at my table, and found my phone. My fingers, still trembling slightly, typed a message to Damien. "How close are you?" The reply was instantaneous. 15 minutes. "Everything okay?" I hesitated for a fraction of a second before typing the truth. Dad pushed me into the fountain. In front of everyone. The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then reappeared. Finally, a new message. "I'm coming. 10 minutes. My security team is already on the perimeter." I hadn't known he'd sent a team ahead. That was Damien. Always thinking 10 steps ahead, always protecting me. The door opened and a young woman I vaguely recognized as one of Tristan's cousins entered. She stopped short. "Oh my God. Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I said, my voice stronger than I expected. "Just a little wet." "That was the most horrible thing I've ever seen," she said, her eyes wide with genuine shock. "Your father," her unexpected kindness almost broke my composure. "Thank you for saying that." "I have a wrap in my car," she offered. "It's not much, but—" "That's incredibly kind, but I have a change of clothes in my car." "A professional habit." I smiled, a real smile this time. "Could you walk with me to the valet?" "I'd rather not face the gauntlet alone." "Of course," she said immediately. "I'm Chloe, by the way." "Serafina," I replied, offering a damp hand. "A pleasure to meet you, Chloe." With Chloe as a buffer, I retrieved my backup outfit, a simple, impeccably tailored black dress and flats I kept for emergencies. In a small, private restroom, I transformed myself. As I reapplied a bit of makeup, I thought about my life, my real life. The priceless art I'd saved. The respect I'd earned from the world's leading experts. The brilliant, kind man I had married. None of that was defined by the people in the ballroom next door. My worth was not, and had never been, in their keeping. My phone vibrated. A text from Damien. "In position." I took a deep breath, smoothed my dress, and walked back towards the reception. The party had resumed, a forced gaiety now tinged with the delicious thrill of scandal. I positioned myself near the main entrance, watching my mother recount a sanitized version of the events to her friends. Always so dramatic, that one. She slipped, of course. Terribly clumsy. She trailed off as she saw me, dry and composed, standing beside her. "Serafina," she said, recovering quickly. "You look better." "Yes, Mother. I'm resourceful." I met her gaze. Was that part of the evening's festivities, or did Dad improvise? "Don't be absurd," she hissed. "You were making a scene by skulking away. Your father simply lost his patience." "Pushing your daughter into a fountain is not a loss of patience, Mother. It's an act of violence." Before she could form a reply, a subtle shift occurred at the entrance. The hum of the party faltered. 2 men in dark, perfectly tailored suits entered the ballroom. Their movements were fluid, their eyes sharp, scanning the room with a calm, professional intensity. My father, seeing them, puffed out his chest and strode over. "Excuse me," he said officiously. "This is a private event." One of the men, a man I knew as David, looked past my father as if he were a pane of glass. The other spoke quietly into a cufflink. "Perimeter secure. Principal is entering." And then Damien walked in. He filled the doorway. At 6'2", with the quiet confidence of a man who is used to commanding any room he enters, he was an arresting sight. He wore a dark gray suit that was a masterpiece of understated elegance. His eyes, a startlingly clear blue, swept the room and found me in an instant. The focused intensity of his gaze softened into a smile that was meant only for me. People instinctively moved aside, creating a path as he walked directly toward me. I was vaguely aware of my mother beside me, her body rigid, her champagne flute frozen halfway to her lips. "Serafina," Damien said, his voice a warm baritone that cut through the sudden hush. He took both my hands in his thumbs gently brushing my knuckles. "Sorry I'm late. The accord took longer than expected." "You're right on time," I replied, a profound sense of peace settling over me. He leaned down and kissed me, a soft, lingering kiss that was both a greeting and a promise. His hand came to rest protectively on the small of my back as he turned to face my mother. "Mrs. Sterling," he said, his politeness flawlessly cool. "I'm Damien Thorne, Serafina's husband." My mother's face was a spectacular canvas of warring emotions, confusion, disbelief, and a dawning, horrified comprehension. "Husband," she repeated, her voice a reedy whisper. But Serafina never. 3 years next month, Damien supplied smoothly. "We prefer to keep our private life private." My father had pushed through the gawking crowd. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded, his face florid. "Is this some kind of prank, Serafina? Hiring an actor and bodyguards? This is a new low, even for you." A dangerous stillness settled over Damien's features. "Mr. Sterling," he said, his voice deceptively mild. "I am the CEO of Thorne Industries. Your daughter and I have been married for 3 years." My father's mouth opened and closed. Thorne Industries was a name everyone knew. Its philanthropic arm, the Thorne Foundation, was one of the largest in the world. He was a regular on the covers of Forbes and The Economist. "That's not possible," my father stammered. "We would have known." "Would you?" Damien asked, a genuine curiosity in his tone. "From what Serafina has told me, and from what I witnessed myself on the terrace this evening, you've never been particularly interested in the details of her life." My sister, Isabella, had now joined the tableau, her white gown a stark contrast to the dark drama unfolding. "What is going on?" she demanded. "Who are these people?" "Apparently," my mother said faintly, "your sister has a husband." "That's ridiculous," Isabella scoffed. "She's making this up for attention." On my wedding day, Damien's arm tightened around my waist, a silent anchor. He turned to Isabella. "Mrs. Lancaster, congratulations on your marriage. I do apologize for my tardiness. A green energy initiative in Geneva required my presence." His impeccable manners made Isabella's petulance seem childish. "You expect us to believe," my father found his voice again, "that Serafina, our Serafina, secretly married a billionaire," supplied Tristan Lancaster from behind Isabella, his eyes wide as he stared at his phone. "Forbes estimates his net worth at over 20 billion. A collective gasp swept the room. My mother swayed, gripping the back of a chair for support. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Why wouldn't you tell us?" For the first time, her question sounded less like an accusation and more like a genuine, painful query. I looked at her, at the cracks beginning to show in her perfect facade. "When have you ever wanted to hear about my life, Mother?" I asked gently. "When have you ever celebrated anything that was truly mine?" She had no answer. "As for me," Damien continued, his voice calm but unyielding, "I have been looking forward to meeting the family Serafina has described. However, after watching you assault your own daughter, Mr. Sterling, I find myself disappointed." My father's face purpled with rage. "Now you listen to me, young man." "No, Mr. Sterling," Damien interrupted, and his voice was suddenly as hard and cold as diamond. "You listen. I watched from the terrace as you verbally abused and then physically assaulted your daughter. My security team was prepared to intervene, but Serafina, your victim, signaled them to stand down. Because even after your despicable behavior, she did not want to ruin her sister's wedding." The room was so quiet I could hear the faint hum of the chandeliers. "Fortunately for you," Damien finished, his eyes boring into my father's, "my wife is a far more forgiving person than I am. Because I assure you, if anyone ever lays a hand on her again, my response will not be nearly so restrained." The threat, delivered in a civilized murmur, was more chilling than any shout. And at that exact moment, as if on cue, the ballroom doors opened again. A distinguished, silver-haired man in a tweed jacket strode in, his expression urgent. It was Dr. Alastair Finch, my mentor and colleague from the Foundation. He spotted me and headed straight for our group, his eyes ignoring everyone else. "Director Sterling," he said, his voice carrying in the silent room. "I apologize for the interruption, but we have a situation. The Ministry of Culture just authenticated the find in Alexandria. It's the real thing. They need your authorization on the acquisition protocol immediately." The title hung in the air. "Director Sterling." "Director of what?" my father mumbled, utterly bewildered. Damien's smile was thin and sharp. Your daughter is the Director of Curation and Acquisitions for the Ethelred Foundation, Mr. Sterling. It's one of the most prestigious positions in the art world. She oversees a multi-billion-dollar trust and is responsible for preserving some of civilization's greatest treasures. More gasps. More whispers. My mother looked as though she might actually faint. Isabella stared at me, her perfect bridal makeup unable to hide the dawning horror on her face. That's impossible, she whispered. She's just... Just what, Isabella? I asked, my voice soft. Just your quiet older sister? Just the family disappointment. She couldn't answer. The Serafina Sterling I know, Damien said, his voice filled with a pride that my own father had never shown me, is brilliant, respected, and formidable. She commands the respect of world leaders and the most renowned experts in her field. She makes decisions that will echo for centuries. He turned to look directly at my father. And for some reason I will never understand, she still cared enough to attend this wedding, knowing exactly how you would treat her. My father seemed to shrink, the arrogant professor replaced by a confused, broken old man. Why? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Why didn't you tell us? Would you have believed me? I replied. Or would you have found a way to diminish this too? His silence was my answer. Alistair held out a secure tablet. Director, I'm sorry to press, but they're on a hard deadline. I took the tablet, scanned the encrypted report, and made a decision. Authorize the acquisition. Use the pre-approved secondary fund, and activate Protocol Gamma for transport. I'll be on the first flight out in the morning. Understood, Alistair said, taking the tablet back. The exchange took less than 30 seconds, but it vibrated with a level of authority and consequence my family had never comprehended. We should go, Damien said gently, taking my hand. The jet is waiting. He nodded politely to my stunned family. Mr. and Mrs. Sterling. It has been illuminating. Serafina, wait, my father said, a desperate edge to his voice. We need to talk about this. We're your parents. We've always been proud of you. The blatant attempt to rewrite history was so reflexive, so ingrained, it was almost pitiable. But I was no longer susceptible to it. No, Dad, I said, not with anger, but with a gentle finality. You haven't. And that's all right. I don't need you to be anymore. I turned to my sister. Congratulations, Isabella. I wish you and Tristan happiness. To his credit, Tristan stepped forward and shook my hand. It was an honor to meet you, Director Sterling. And you, Mr. Thorne. I hope we'll see you again. I'd like that, Tristan, I said, and I meant it. Then Damien and I turned and walked out of the ballroom. His security team fell into a discreet formation around us, and we left my family standing in the ruins of their own making. The whispers behind us erupted into a roar of exclamations, but I didn't look back. I was walking toward my own life, into the cool, clear air of a future I had built for myself. Weeks later, sitting with Damien in our favorite quiet cafe in New York, the autumn leaves skittering across the pavement outside, I finally felt the dust of that day settle. The calls and texts from my family had come, a frantic, confused flood. My mother had left 3 voicemails, each one more bewildered than the last, inviting us to dinner, to talk, to understand. Are you going to call her back? Damien asked, his hand covering mine on the table. I've been thinking about what my therapist says, I murmured, tracing the rim of my cup. About how setting boundaries isn't about building walls to punish others. It's about building a garden to protect yourself. He nodded, his eyes full of that quiet understanding that had been my sanctuary from the beginning. A beautiful distinction. I think I can have a relationship with them, I said, the words feeling new and tentative. But it will be on my terms. In my garden. They will have to be invited in, and they will have to learn to respect the space. Last week, I finally called my mother. We met for coffee, just the 2 of us. It was awkward and stilted. She cried. She apologized, not for a lifetime of small cruelties, but for the fountain, which she called Arthur's terrible, unforgivable mistake. It was a start. My sister, Isabella, sent a long, rambling email from her honeymoon. It was full of confusion and anger, But underneath it all, there was a flicker of something else, a dawning awareness that the world she had occupied, with herself at the center, had been a fiction. She asked if we could talk when she returned. I don't know what the future holds for the Sterling family. Healing is not a single event, but a slow, tectonic process. The fractures are deep. But for the first time, there is a possibility of light getting through the cracks. The most profound change, however, was not in them, but in me. That night, standing drenched in that fountain, I was not reborn in fire, but cleansed by water. I washed away the desperate need to be seen by people who were determined to look past me. I let go of the hope that they would one day change, and instead, I embraced the woman I had already become. My family is the man sitting across from me, whose love is a quiet, steadfast anchor. It is my brilliant colleagues who share my passion for preserving the beautiful, fragile history of our world. It is the handful of friends who have known my heart without needing to know my title. Family, I have learned, is not always the one you are born into. It is the one you build. It is the one you choose. And it is the one that chooses you back for exactly who you are.